It's a big day. I'm about to join the movers and shakers of the United States of America. No, I'm not getting a job on Wall Street, but I do intend to influence everything from the economy to national defense to education. 'Cause I'm about to register to vote.
Congratulations! You are about to become part of the process of U.S. government.
Give me liberty, or give me death.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Ask not what your country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Process. That's how things get done. But what is the process of U.S. government?
Political process is how a group of people, in this case U.S. citizens, reach decisions that are binding for the entire group.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
The three branches of government, the President, the Congress, and court system, are key to this process, but so are you.
'Cause we, the people, are the foundation of American government. We have the final say about how our country is run. We let our leaders know what's important to us with the ultimate tool, the vote.
Elected officials get and keep their positions by making and carrying out laws which Americans support. We show that we agree with those officials by voting for them. And we show that we disagree by voting for somebody else whose agenda looks more like our own.
What's at the top of your agenda? Scoring a passing grade on the math test? Making it to the skate park before dinner? Well, as a nation, we have an agenda too. But it's more concerned with big picture stuff like healthcare, the environment, crime, or whatever else seems to be most important at the moment.
One of the main jobs of government is to establish public policy.
Public policy?
Collectively, U.S. citizens are known as the public. Public policy is the plan that sets our national priorities and determines how they can best be achieved.
When it comes to policies, our opinion counts. But it's not always easy to figure out exactly what the public's opinion is. I mean, there are only about 300 million of us. Hey, you! Do you think we're headed in the right direction? Or you? What do you think? Okay, 2 down. Only 299,999,998 to go.
In a diverse society like ours, there will never be just one opinion. Instead, the nation must come to a general agreement about what things should or should not be done. One way to discover how part of the population feels is to conduct a public opinion poll. Iowan George Gallup changed the way Americans look at themselves. A professor of journalism, he invented the modern measure of public sentiment, the opinion poll. Until 1930, politicians and the press had no scientific methodology for gauging the country's mood. They mainly went on hearsay and instinct. Gallup's brainstorm was to ask a cross-section of actual citizens a list of well-worded questions. In 1936, his survey-style research made headlines when Gallup correctly predicted that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt would be re-elected in a landslide. By asking the right questions, George Gallup changed the face of American politics, making this pioneering pollster an American original.
Gallup was the first pollster to ask people to rate the president's performance. These days, that rating has a huge impact on executive power. When it's high, the president can push his agenda through. But when it's low, look out. Congress is unlikely to follow an unpopular leader. Well, that's how I feel about it. You're welcome. Bye. Now say nobody ever calls you and asks for your opinion. Does that mean you're left out of the debate on the American agenda?
Certainly not. There are dozens of ways for ordinary citizens to become involved in the political process. One of the most common is to join a political party.
Everybody loves a good party. And the history of political parties is almost as old as the United States itself.
The first parties were divided by the same issues that split the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Strong federal government versus states' rights. Those who favored the federal government were known as Federalists, and those who were anti-federal government were known as
Anti-Federalists. Thomas Jefferson led the Anti-Federalists, who later changed their name to, get this, the Democratic Republicans. Today that sounds a little like jumbo shrimp, if you know what I mean. But back then there wasn't any Republican Party, so the name wasn't as confusing. It was long though, so in the end they shortened it to just plain old Democrats. Now maybe you think that all the fighting between political parties is something new and unpleasant, but actually it's as American as the Founding Fathers.
July 11th, 1804. The morning mists conceal a solemn scene on the shores of Weehawken, New Jersey. The Vice President of the United States and Anti-Federalist Aaron Burr and the former Secretary of Treasury and Federalist Alexander Hamilton face off in a duel.
The second said 1, 2, 3, present, and both guns went off. Hamilton's bullet went above Burr, but Burr's bullet went through Hamilton's abdomen, lodged in his spine, and he immediately fell. Hamilton died at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on July 12th, and this was a momentous event because the Vice President of the United States had just killed this former party leader, Alexander Hamilton. They hadn't quite figured out how political opposition would work on a routine basis. It was still very personal, and it was still very crisis-ridden, and so it was something worth fighting for and dying for.
Political process or duel to the death? I guess I'd rather go to a party. But to tell you the truth, the two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, look kind of the same to me. Can you tell the difference?
Republicans tend to be more conservative, while Democrats tend to be more liberal.
Republicans are also more big on smaller government.
The Democratic bodies, I believe, would like government to take care of the people, and with the Republicans, it's a more capitalistic, self-driven, I'll do it, just get out of my way.
Generally, most Republicans tend to be conservative when it comes to taxes and social issues, and most Democrats tend to be more liberal in these areas.
But like any group of people, not everyone fits neatly into those categories. Some Republicans are actually pretty liberal, while some Democrats are kind of conservative. And many politicians fall somewhere in between. If you can't tell the Democrats from the Republicans, what exactly is the point of parties?
A political party's goal is to control government by winning elections and holding office. A party can only gain control by listening to the voters. It gathers public opinion, which helps it shape the public agenda and gives focus to individual concerns. That's an important function in such a large and diverse society.
It's a way for people to gather, for their voices to be heard in a far more effective way than it would be if they were left on their own. Doesn't mean you necessarily agree with everything your party of choice stands for. But if by and large you find yourself more comfortable with a set of principles they embrace, then you give greater strength to your ideas than it would be if you were doing it on your own. And so I think parties have actually served our country very well, have given more power to people than they would have had otherwise.
So joining a political party gives a group of like-minded people a single voice, and their unity gives them more power.
Right. A party allows citizens to merge their many concerns into a manageable slate of issues.
One that's easy for the voters to digest.
During a campaign year, that agenda is called the party platform. One of the main roles of parties is to nominate or choose good candidates to run for office. The major political parties pick their candidates at primary elections.
A primary is like an election within an election. It's your first chance to cast a ballot for the candidate of your choice.
In order to be successful, a party must embrace a broad cross-section of attitudes, not just conservative or liberal, but also from the middle of the political spectrum. Only then will its candidates attract enough voters. That's why the Republicans and Democrats may seem awfully similar at times, especially during national elections. But in reality, the two parties usually offer distinct choices to the voters in terms of candidates and policy.
I am not aware of a single democracy in the world that functions without political parties. We need parties to structure choices for citizens in elections. We need parties to link citizens to activists, and we need parties to organize the business of government within legislative bodies.
So the two parties are like package deals. You get a multi-course dinner with all the trimmings. Candidates, issues, election support, the whole works. Which is fine as long as you like everything that's being served. But some people would rather give up the power of a major party and concentrate on their own favorite issues.
In a political system ruled by two parties, some folks go out and join a third. July 6th, 1854. Two political parties dominate the country, the Whigs and the Democrats. In Washington, the Kansas-Nebraska Act has just been passed, making slavery legal in the Western Territories. The controversial law alarms many members of both parties gathering in Jackson, Michigan. Dedicated to stopping the spread of slavery above all else, many people decide to leave these two political parties to form a new third party. Invoking the spirit of Thomas Jefferson's original party, they call themselves the Republicans.
Whoa, the Republicans were the most successful third party ever. Right from the start, they blew the Whigs out of the water and took their place as one of the big two. And they nominated a man who would become one of our greatest presidents ever, Abraham Lincoln. But other third parties have had a tougher go of it. You've probably never even heard of most of them.
Most of them are more about advocacy than election returns. And sometimes that can be a powerful role as well. In the 1996 presidential election, Ross Perot and his Reform Party were not as concerned with winning as alerting the public about a dangerous budget deficit. But their issue resonated so well with the American people, the party took a whopping 8% of the vote.
In a typical election year, all the third parties put together would be lucky to get half of that.
The election's winner, President Clinton, got the message loud and clear. Deficit reduction headed his agenda in his second term.
To many people, the American two-party system seems kind of limited. Wouldn't three parties be better? Or how about 4 or 5, like they have in many other countries?
I think it's very important that our system be open to the formation of new political parties. It's a safety valve, creating an opportunity for a new group to emerge, to give voice to a concern that's not being represented by the two major parties. But typically, those parties' agenda is then absorbed by one of the two major parties and they fade away. That's been the history of American political parties. I doubt whether, given the current distribution of public opinion in the country, the election rules under which we operate, that another major party could arise and coexist along with the other two parties.
In my state, when you register to vote, you can declare a party. That way, you can participate in the party's primary elections. But how do you know which party is best for you? The Republicans, the Democrats, or something else? It's time to get some hard facts. Where do you get your information?
School, the television, radio, newspaper.
Usually just on front pages of newspapers, on internet websites.
Usually on the news channel, or if my parents are talking about it, then I might listen.
I look at the newspaper, like little sections of it, and I watch the news with my dad.
The Founding Fathers considered a free and independent press so important that they guaranteed its rights in the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
It was said by one of our early leaders in this country that if they had to choose between a free government or a free media and only could choose one, they would choose a free media on the assumption that a free government would emerge. but that the opposite might not be true. And it's absolutely critical when we talk about institutions of our government, the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch. There is another estate, another branch in a sense, and that is a free press, on which people depend for getting their information, knowing what's going on, analyzing situations, helping us make better decisions about the choices in front of us.
The media has had a major impact on our national agenda. It shines a spotlight on critical issues and explains why we should care about them. It gives us dozens of viewpoints, positive and negative, on any given topic.
When it comes to mass media, you should always question who's telling the story and which parts they choose to tell. What they leave out may be as important as what they put in. All sources of information have some sort of bias.
Politicians have long realized the power of media and used it to their advantage. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt captivated America with his radio broadcast known as Fireside Chats.
Those broadcasts were brilliant. They made people feel like the president was a member of the family. His political agenda became a natural part of the living room conversation.
Today, with a television set in 97% of U.S. homes, there can be no doubt about where America gets most of its information. And that's not always a good thing.
The positive news about television is that it's easier for citizens to get information about politics, but the negative is that it tends to emphasize matters of style over substance, elements of strategy and tactics over serious matters of governance, and tempts politicians to engage in elaborate marketing efforts rather than engaging in serious conversations with the American people.
Here's a source of information with a definite point of view. Interest groups.
An interest group is a private organization that tries to sway public policy.
We're talking about groups like the Environmental Defense Fund and the National Rifle Association.
They have specific agendas, whether it's saving the environment or protecting the right to bear arms.
If there's something you feel strongly about, you don't have to be a lone voice crying in the wilderness. Join an interest group and your voice will be added to many others just like it, from all over the country. You do the math. 1 + 1 + several thousand equals political power.
Not only do these organizations raise awareness, they also have amazing influence in Washington. Interest groups do the lion's share of fact-finding on their topics. With this information, they lobby or try to persuade government officials to adopt their point of view. A major resource, they are indispensable to politicians, both for their research and their campaign contributions.
There's a link between the legislation a politician supports and who's supplying the information and cold hard cash.
Election campaigns are very expensive, and they're getting more expensive. To finance those elections, politicians are driven to raise a lot of money. That raises concerns about conflicts of interest, of special advantages, of moneyed interest, of the money chase and how it distorts the behavior of politicians. All natural concerns in a healthy democracy.
I may not have any money to spend on a candidate, but I do have something just as valuable. The right to vote.
The single most influential thing that any U.S. citizen can do in the political process is vote. In fact, our democracy depends on it. The very act of voting means that you agree to be part of our democratic system.
But first you have to get registered. It's as easy as getting a driver's license.
In fact, you can do it at the same time. Motor voter laws were first enacted in 1995, and in the first 3 years alone, voter registration rolls increased by 20%.
Where I live, you need to be 18 years old to register. You can even register when you're 17, as long as you'll be 18 when the next election rolls around. You also have to be a citizen of the United States and have lived in your current residence for at least 30 days.
That's pretty typical for most states, though there are some variations. Your county courthouse, public library, or town hall can fill you in on the details.
And that's it. I'm registered to vote. I am now part of the political process. I can't wait to vote.
Voting is so important to everybody because it's the one opportunity that you have to really support democracy and make a difference, whether you're voting for your town's elections, whether you're voting for the state, or whether you're voting for president.
This is a polling place. And no, they don't do opinion polls here. They hold elections. Every voting district, which is called a precinct, has its own polling place. They're usually in public buildings like schools or town halls. Between them all, there's a bunch of different ways to cast your ballot, from an old-fashioned ballot box to voting machines. My precinct's gone high-tech. We use optical scanners. To use it, you fill in the ballot with a pencil, kind of like a multiple-choice test. Then you feed it into the machine where your choices are scanned and registered and counted. If you do something wrong, it'll even tell you and give you back your ballot. No matter how your town does it, ultimately, voting comes down to you and the ballot. Because the voting booth is the most private place in public life. Nobody else can tell you what to do, and your vote will be kept a secret. Did you do your research? Did you register to vote? Do you want to make a difference? Then go ahead, make your mark, vote. What? You don't think one vote makes a difference?
We know that votes count. We've seen elections. We saw a recent presidential election in the country where literally a handful of people in one state decided the presidency of the United States. And so no one can any longer say my vote doesn't count.
One vote kept Aaron Burr from being elected president in 1800. In 1960, President John F. Kennedy won by a margin of 1 vote per precinct. In 2000, President George W. Bush carried the state of Florida by an even smaller margin.
Will you help decide what direction the country goes in? Political parties, opinion polls, the media, interest groups, all play a part in shaping the American agenda. But the power is also in our hands, because as the next generation of voters, we are the heart of the U.S. political process.